I'm going to move into some Valentines that were given out during school in the late 1920s and into the 30s. I have three different families of cards in that same basic time period. This group belongs to a young girl named, at that time, of course, Virginia Dresselbach. I believe that she might have been from here in Lancaster. And this, all these pieces are from that, late 1929 to 1932, 1933 time period. As I've said a couple times before, I really like pieces that tell a story. These tell a story in multiple ways. First of all, they all belong to the same basic family. These elaborate Valentines are marked on the back, one from Mom, one from Daddy. These are from classmates. In 1929, we have the stock market crash, and by the time we're in the 1930s, we're deep in depression. And some of these are homemade cards. This one is an example. You can open up the window and see the little boy on the inside. Essentially, this is a cutout of like a catalog, like Sears catalog. This one, construction paper. You can see the boy and the girl back there. A little bit of glistening off of that. This is actually wallpaper, and you can see on the inside that it's out of a wallpaper book. And then, again, this is probably cut out of something like a Sears catalog to add that decoration there. So, when you couldn't afford Valentines, everybody wanted to make sure you had one for that Valentine box. You made your own Valentines. This one is actually a mailed Valentine, and it was to Mr. Ned Dresselbach. Now, I don't know if it's the same family or the same location. This was sent to Circleville, Ohio. And this is the Valentine that was mailed to Ned. The most unusual one out of this collection is this one. You can see that it says Christmas greetings, but it is addressed to Virginia Dresselbach. So this was a recycling of a Christmas card put into the Valentine box so that that child had something to give away on Valentine's Day. This is another group of cards that would have been given generally at school. This one belongs to a Wayne Kelly who lived in Bremen. And we know that from, this particular address. All the rest of them just say to Wayne, but we've got a whole address here and a stamped, up here, and a date down here of 1933. This is another one from 1933. It actually has a small calendar, and it's pulled open to February 1933. This one comes from his sister. There's some affluence, here. At that time period, Bremen was an affluent community. This one is three-dimensional. It will spread open like this, and the dog will rock back and forth, and so will the young man. This one came from Wayne's teacher, most likely. And it's a very elaborate Valentine. You can imagine that probably set the teacher back to buy one of those for every one of her students. This one's folded up. We know that it's to Wayne, and that's from Bill. That's a little unusual that Bill sent him this, because it's one of those vinegar Valentines that we talked about a while back. Okay. The Little Housewife. So obviously this was not necessarily intended and picked out specifically for Wayne, but it's one of those comic or vinegar-type Valentines that we saw a while back. This is a collection from another child's school Valentine party. This particular grouping is from my wife's father, her aunt, and her uncle, Hutchisons. So we have an interesting time period also of the things that we've been looking at in the past. We have a simple fold down, a simple one-sided chromolithograph piece. This one's a mechanical. The eyes shift, just a very simple one. Another simple fold down, and two homemade ones. This one's just a heart cut out of a piece of construction paper. Be My Valentine and who it's addressed to. This one's another one out of construction paper, a little bit more cleverly done, that opens up with Valentine's greetings on the inside of it. Also from the 1920s, obviously not designed for children, are these two vinegar Valentines. This is one making fun of the suffragettes, the ladies looking for the vote. The paper is, very plain. And this one is you got the Cupid over here. It's a Valentine, obviously, making a cut on how extravagant this particular lady is. And again, she's dressed in a 1920s style clothes. The other thing that we've been talking about, we looked at some of the homemade Valentines. And this is a kit from that same time period, 1920s, 1930s, for a child to make their own Valentines to go into the Valentine box at school. This one's a Valentine man. There's just a lot of little pieces and parts in there. This one is addressed to Karen, and it's another Valentine man. Another Valentine man. And then down here in the bottom are some of these lace papers, perforated pieces that we talked about and we looked at. There's your directions for making all these pieces of Valentines. Just an interesting collection of things that the child could be creative with and make Valentines out of. There's an old Valentine that's probably been ruined, and they could cut it apart and add on to other papers. The other thing that's interesting is from the same time period, but it's 8 assorted Valentines for 5 cents. And it tells you who the maker is. There's no envelopes involved in this, but it has, the name of the maker on it and what his specialty is: radio, toys, dolls, wheel goods, novelties, greeting cards for all occasions. Okay, and these happen to be Valentines. So one of the things that I wondered about when I was looking at this is, okay, so I get 8 of these, and it costs me a nickel. 1930s, we're in the depth of the Depression. Southeastern Ohio is based on coal mining. And so you'd probably have about 40 kids in a class. And I know that sounds strange for today, but when I started teaching in the early 70s, I had 40 in my first class. So you'd take 5 packages of these to put a Valentine in every child's class. That would be 25 cents spent. In 1930, that 25 cents would buy you a quart of milk and a dozen eggs and some bread. So if you were a poor family, do you spend it on Valentines or do you feed your family? So hence I think we end up with some of these Valentines that are homemade and pieces cut out of catalogs. This is a continuation of the children's Valentines, sometimes called juveniles, from the 1920s and 1930s. These are the beginning of the commercialization, advertising of a product, so to speak. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 Walt Disney made Valentines that essentially are based around the theme of their full-length feature cartoon, Pinocchio. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 that are based around, again, the full-length feature cartoon of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. As we move forward in time, we're going to see lots of cartoon characters in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and all the way up to Valentine's today of Iron Man and Harry Potter and things like that. This is the beginning of that kind of a franchise of Valentines. Most of these all move. We can see the Geppetto. It's simple movement. He's calling down into the ocean. He's looking for Pinocchio, who's been swallowed up by the whale. And this one, the character Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio hide down inside the carriage. This one is the Blue Fairy, and she will bring up a little love heart on that one. The two of the seven doors that we have bend at the waist, very simply. And there we go. And the broom moves back and forth. And the squirrel, there we go. Squirrel comes in and out of the broom. This one's a little bit more elaborate. Again, it's a mechanical. It's dated 1938. Walt Disney Enterprises, made in the USA. Who's hiding there behind the door? Hi-ho, don't talk so loud, hooray. It is my Valentine. And when you push this one, you push Dopey forward with his candle, you see on the inside Snow White sleeping in the beds. My Valentine I finally found. So we're going to look at 1940s, and in particular World War II Valentines. As you know, in World War II, the whole country got behind that war effort, and that included making sure that, Valentines also reflected that war ornament. This one is to my boyfriend who is going places for Uncle Sam, okay? And then on the inside, so watch your step, concentrate on your duties, keep your mind off the foreign cuties. This one is a tank that's kind of outfitted with Valentines on it, and the tank will slide open, and you have a lot more peaceful scene on the inside. This one shows a whack. Okay, I can keep a secret like all good whacks do, but I've got a secret in my bonnet that concerns a Valentine like you. So this is, again, one designed for a lady to give to a gentleman. This one is a larger mechanical one. He's out on maneuvers, and I want to see your sweet face every place I go. Won't you surrender? And so, in the mechanical part of it, she jumps up out of the bushes and has a Valentine for him. This one is one of those, again, that I think tells a story. It starts with the envelope itself. It's Corporal Paul Sands. He's in the headquarters company of the 2nd Battalion of the 508th Parachute Infantry, and he was stationed in Camp Blandings, Florida. So, and it was also addressed to Lillian Marie Cumley on Congress Street in Athens, Ohio, so very close by. And you have this beautiful card then from the 1940s, fan, feathers, lots of pretty things, okay? And it's from Paul, yours to be lover. This is a collection of Valentines from the 1950s. Those of you that, like I, grew up in the 1950s, these were the types of Valentines you typically got in your Valentine box that you made at home and took to school. Cowboys were always, in vogue at that point in time. Lots of cowboy shows on television. These would fold together into a smaller envelope. Always in that packet that you would get of Valentines, there was at least one to your teacher. Please, teacher, be my Valentine. So there's one of the teacher Valentines. This one in the back was a Valentine to my wife from her aunt and uncle when she was in second grade. So it's nice, pretty, but 1950s. These were more for adults. These are some more of those vinegar Valentines, but these particular ones date from the 1950s. One is making fun of the tightwad man, and this is making fun of the woman that's a cook, but she's not the typical cook, from scratch cook. That's that changeover in time period. This one is a little bit interesting in the sense that this one is sent to the boss, and of course nobody's going to sign their name to a vinegar Valentine to their boss, so it's just been guess who. And then this one is from generally the 1960s. I worked in a drugstore as a stock boy in the early and mid 60s, and we sold this candy, and a doll on top of an elaborate box of chocolates. Very popular at that time. I know we sold probably hundreds of these candy boxes with the dolls on top at that time period. And one last piece that will bring everything full circle. From the 1950s, 60s, all the way back to those early Valentines. This is a Valentine here made in the 1840s. It is repurposed by the Spalding Company, who were jewelers, silversmiths, and stationers in Chicago, for an anniversary in 1959. So they have taken this old Valentine and they've put this jeweled gold framework around it as an anniversary gift for a couple in 1959.